Coming up, see what it's like to fly the AOPA Sweepstakes Grumman Tiger, and we take a look at the latest Garmin Pilot Watch.
Plus, the return of a beloved Cessna model and touring the Big Bend region of Texas. All this and more in just a moment.
This is AOPA Live This Week with Tom Haines and Alyssa Cobb.
Well, this was certainly unexpected.
It sure was. Late Wednesday night, FAA Administrator Stephen Dickson announced his resignation effective at the end of March. Now, President Trump had appointed the former Air Force pilot and Delta Airlines captain to be the top FAA boss in 2019. It's a 5-year term that expires in August of 2024, but Dickson said he was resigning now to spend more time with his family.
One of the things about Steve Dickson that has been unique is that he had in-depth knowledge of Next Gen Advisory Committee. I sat with him along with the others for the number of years that I've been working with him before he became the FAA administrator. He's always been engaged, and as you know, came to Oshkosh and other events to try and really participate in the world of general aviation. But to this date, whether it was COVID restrictions or other things that made sense for us to work together on, Steve was always there and would pick up the phone.
And Tom, I am sure he has spent a lot of time away from his family over the last few years with everything that has happened globally and within the agency. You've got the coronavirus pandemic, the flight training fiasco requiring letters of deviation authority for experimental aircraft training, the Boeing MAX situation, unruly passengers. I mean, really, everything that could hit has hit under his term, just about.
Yeah, it really has. And, my guess is, although nobody will say this out loud probably at the administration, is that some of this goes back to the Boeing MAX thing in that their effort to sort of, say that they've cleaned house and because the FAA took a lot of blame for what happened with Boeing MAX and the way that their certification procedures went. So my guess is some of this goes back to that, even though he wasn't really there when that whole thing played out, at least at the beginning and certainly during the certification process of the MAX. So some of that, and then of course 5G has been in the news lately, and the FAA has been accused of maybe not handling that as well as they could have, although there's plenty of blame over on the telecommunications side as well. So yeah, lots of issues at the FAA that he's been dealing with. And he's apparently decided that he wants to go do something else, and given all the hassle, who can blame him?
Right.
Right. All right. Well, hey, forgive me if I wax Shakespearean here, but to quote from Hamlet, "'Tis the sport to have the engineer hoisted with his own petard." In this case, the engineer, of course, is the East Hampton Town Council.
Okay, Tom, I am just not as up on my Shakespeare as you. So what's a petard and how is East Hampton being hoisted?
Okay, too obscure for you, sorry.
Little.
A petard is a small bomb, and in this case, it looks like East Hampton is about to get blown up by a device of its own making. You may recall East Hampton's clever plan to reduce aircraft activity annoying wealthy homeowners there. The town announced that it would close the public use airport at midnight, February 28th, and then reopen it as a private use, prior permission required airport on March 4th. Well, the Hamptons, of course, are a Tony getaway place for some very well-to-do folks. Many of them get there using their own private jets. But there are also commuter helicopters and airplanes that regularly fly to the airport, and that's just a little too much noise for the folks who have the bucks to have their own rides. Now the petard, or bomb if you will, the FAA has sent the town a letter saying, in essence, you can close the airport if you want, but it may be 2 years before you can reopen it. All of your instrument procedures will go away. Any FAA-operated navigation, communication, and weather equipment will go away. Your Class D airspace goes away. And we'll have to do a new airspace analysis before we'll let you reopen the airport. Oh, and all your instrument procedures will have to be recertified and recreated at your expense. So quite a letter. So Bill Dunn has been leading the AOPA fight to keep this airport open. So Bill, does this threatening letter from the FAA change the plans to close the airport?
Also on Tuesday of this week, there were 3 lawsuits filed against the town in the Supreme Court of the state of New York, asking for a temporary restraining order and an injunction to prevent the town from closing the airport on February 28th. There's a hearing before the Supreme Court this coming Friday at 10 a.m. on that motion.
Well, Bill, so did that come from tenants based at the airport or local businesses or who use the airport? Who initiated that, and what are the people who are going to be affected most there at the airport? What are they going to do?
Well, it's interesting because one of the lawsuits was filed by Blade, the company that provides charter helicopter service out of Manhattan into East Hampton during the summer season. They also provide caravan on floats operations into Sag Harbor. Two of the litigants are hangar owners and a hangar association based on the airport. There was a fourth lawsuit filed that was ultimately dismissed by the court. That was filed by the Long Island Aviation Group, which is essentially an estate that has aircraft stored at the airport. That lawsuit was dismissed earlier this week.
Okay. Have you heard our tenants there preparing to relocate their aircraft? Seems like 2 years would be an awfully long time to be stuck.
Well, it's interesting because, the township says that they may not be able to open the airport as a full service airport on March the 3rd, which would mean they wouldn't have instrument approaches, controlled airspace, or an air traffic control tower. But if worst case scenario, the township would open the airport as a VFR only airport. The FAA has not ruled on that. Essentially, the FAA has not prohibited the town from opening the airport. They've just said you're not going to have the same facilities when you open it, if you open it, that you have today.
Okay, got it. So now if they do want to pursue having private instrument approaches made and the FAA has to do an airspace study, why does the FAA still need to be involved?
Well, it's interesting because, even if the township has to hire a contractor to prepare the airspace study and the instrument approach procedures, the FAA still has to approve those as part of the national airspace system. So the township can't just create an instrument approach and say, here it is, you can fly it.
Hey, Bill, are there other things the FAA can do in their arsenal that they can bring forward to try to get this changed on the part of the township?
Well, I certainly wish that they did, and I know that the local tenants wish that they did as well. But once the grant assurance was expired in September of last year, the FAA essentially lost all control over the airport. The township has the legal right to close the airport. I think the greatest fear at this point from some of the tenants is with all the litigation flying around, the township ultimately could get disgusted and say, okay, we're not going to open an airport, we're just going to close it permanently. Certainly that would lead to additional litigation as well from the tenants that are based there.
Right, sure would. Okay. All right, well, Bill, thanks so much for sharing your insights on this. I know you've been working on this issue for a very long time and lots more to come, I'm sure.
Absolutely, not over yet.
All right. Well, while we continue to fight for East Hampton, there's cause for celebration in Hawaii. The Hawaii Department of Transportation was planning to close Dillingham Airfield on Oahu last year, but AOPA, along with a strong movement of local pilots and business leaders, came together to convince the Hawaii DOT to keep the airport open. Now, Dillingham is ideal for soaring, skydiving, and flight training, and it's also a major economic asset to the area. AOPA President Mark Baker and our own Western Pacific Regional Manager Melissa McCaffrey celebrated the win recently by hosting an appreciation brunch to thank all the people who helped save the airport.
It was a great show of what I continue to be impressed by every time I visit the airfield, which is a sense of real community and camaraderie amongst the businesses and the folks that have really put a lot of time and effort into ensuring the future viability of the airport.
Now, AOPA will remain on the front lines in Hawaii to ensure GA continues to thrive at Dillingham for years to come. Now, on March 6th and 7th, AOPA will host 2 safety days on Oahu to help prioritize a positive safety culture on the islands.
Victory in Hawaii, but the challenge of getting the lead out of avgas still a ways away from the finish line.
This is one of the biggest threats to GA that we have seen in decades. We have talked about avgas for over 20 plus years. We've talked about all the efforts to move to an unleaded avgas. The pendulum has swung depending on how urgent it is to it's less urgent, and the level of effort and investment and activity has gone up and down. But right now we are facing an environment that we see that leaded avgas is going to have some threats in terms of continued availability.
Walter DeRosa was speaking last week at the Redbird Migration. He said about 70% of the GA fleet today could operate on the existing no-lead fuels, but the remaining 30% of the high-performance aircraft need a higher octane fuel to avoid detonation. And that 30% of the fleet represents about 70% of the avgas consumption. That means there has to be a safe transition to a no-lead fuel that will work for high-performance engines as well. And any new fuel has to be tested and certified not only for airframes and engines, but also the whole distribution system from the refinery all the way to the fuel truck. And he said the aviation industry must take the lead to chart the path to an unleaded fuel.
So AOPA has taken a lead for the coalition in really trying to do some advocacy, create awareness, create understanding. And so there's a web page specifically on getting the lead out, and that's going to be a source and a resource for all of us. And as this initiative is coming together, where are we with fuels today? There's a lot of work being done on 100 octane fuels, but those are big challenges to assess and evaluate those fuels and figure out whether or not they're going to be viable to not only replace 100 low lead, but to be able to be economically viable and available in the system.
So bottom line, the GA industry recognizes that we have to eliminate lead and avgas, and we're closer to that goal than we've ever been before. Also announced at the Redbird Migration last week, a new collaboration between Redbird and the AOPA High School Initiative. Redbird has created a series of simulator scenarios that can be integrated with the AOPA High School STEM curriculum. The scenarios are free and they can be used with any company's simulator.
Early on, it's just very basic stuff, like how to control the airplane, basic maneuvers, that kind of thing. As they progress on in the course, in the AOPA course, we'll start to tie in more interesting destinations, more interesting things that they can do with it. And it's really, it's about teaching math and science and technology and engineering to kids using aviation as the vehicle to deliver that. And the simulators fit nicely because it gives them some hands-on experience with what they're learning about.
You can find out more about AOPA's free aviation-based high school STEM curriculum on our website. Just click on the You Can Fly tab on the top of the page. The curriculum currently in use by about 10,000 students across the country in more than 322 schools in 44 states. Some 20% of the students are female and 40% of the students are people of color. The demand for pilots is booming, and more than 1,200 prospective professional pilots have better prospects after this weekend. The National Gay Pilots Association, or NGPA, Industry Expo returned to Palm Springs after having taken 2 years off because of the pandemic. The event started in 2014 and has now grown to be the second largest pilot recruiting and aviation networking event in the United States. 71 companies were exhibiting, including big-name airlines like United, Delta, American, Alaska, and FedEx. American Airlines offered on-the-spot interviews with selected candidates and handed out multiple job offers over the two-day event. NGPA also announced their first GA-focused event, Wings Over Iowa. The fly-in will happen in Cedar Rapids, June 3rd through the 5th. You can read more about it on our website.
Well, Tecnam is celebrating a first, the maiden flight of their hybrid electric P2010. The airplane is powered by a Rotax 915IS engine coupled with a 30-kilowatt Rolls-Royce electric motor totaling 180 horsepower. Now, Tecnam says it's the first GA airplane with a parallel hybrid configuration to fly. Now, the airplane is not going to be coming to market. They built it as a research and development project for future green aircraft. Meanwhile, Cessna is celebrating the 8,000th Citation jet. The Citation family is the best-selling line of business jets in the world. Now, Scott's Miracle-Gro took delivery of the 8,000th airplane, a Citation Longitude. Cessna delivered the first Citation back in 1972, and since then, Citations have flown more than 41 million flight hours across the globe. Well, also coming out of Cessna, the Turbo Skylane is back. Cessna is taking orders for the airplane again, and deliveries are scheduled to start next year. The Turbo 182 hasn't been available since 2013. Now, this new release one will feature Garmin G1000 NXI avionics, a heated propeller, in-cabin oxygen system, and a new interior. The Turbo Skyline is especially useful for pilots who live and fly in the mountainous regions of the country, and the airplane will cost $653,000.
Hey, and when you talk about mountains, you think of grand mountains and vistas, probably think about places like, well, Colorado or New Mexico, but AOPA Technical Editor Jill Tallman says you can also head to South Texas.
When they said everything's bigger in Texas, they must have been talking about the Big Bend region. This arid, rugged swath is home to Big Bend National Park, 750,000 acres of wilderness. Big Bend reaches down to Mexico and is bordered by the Rio Grande, and its mountain ranges are as imposing as any that can be found in New Mexico or Colorado. The milder temperatures during the winter months make Big Bend a popular destination for hikers. In the summer, outside temperatures soar to 115 degrees daily. Density altitude is always a factor. A 35-mile car trip can take 3 hours. There are no direct roads here. That's why traveling in the area by general aviation is so convenient and so enjoyable. Plan to visit by making a home base in either Alpine or Marfa. There's a friendly general aviation airport in each of these towns. In Marfa, you can fly a glider with the area's resident soaring expert, Bert Compton. Venture deeper into Big Bend, and you have a choice of landing at Lajitas Golf Resort, which has its own paved runway, or the more rustic Terlingua Ranch Lodge, which also has a dirt gravel runway. Locals say that one's not for a novice pilot. Texas makes you work for the privilege of viewing her majestic landscape, but you will come away with a greater appreciation for the enormity of the state. Jill Tolman, AOPA Live.
You can read more about flying the Big Bend region in the March Destinations issue of AOPA Pilot Magazine.
Certainly look beautiful.
It does.
Well, coming up, find out how to buy a ticket to space.
And check out in your sweepstakes Grumman Tiger.
Are you thinking about selling your airplane? I'm Kevin Tracy, and I owned one of the largest advertising agencies north of Boston. And I'm the former VP of Marketing at Piper. I know airplanes and I know advertising. Go to twinairaviation.com to learn more about how I can help you sell your airplane. Welcome back. Avionics technology has come so far in the last few years, and Garmin is working to integrate some of that technology into their watches. AOPA Editor-at-Large Dave Hirschman is testing out the new Garmin D2 Air X10 Aviator smartwatch. He shares his thoughts on the features that are most useful to pilots.
So in the last half century, pilot watches have been on quite a journey. They've gone from totally essential items to fashion statements to completely obsolete. Now Garmin is trying to bring them back with some really smart features that would have seemed like science fiction just a few years ago. It knows the weather, it keeps track of your health, it's a pulse oximeter, it's an altimeter with barometric pressure, and it's sort of a navigator of last resort that if everything else in your panel were to fail, you could still find your way to your destination with your wristwatch. Call Tom Haynes. What's different about the X10 version of the D2 watch is that it has a voice activation function. You know, make voice calls, send voice texts, and any number of things that you would do with, you know, a voice activation command to your smartphone. And the most useful information really is during the pre-flight and the post-flight. It tells the weather extremely well. You know, it gives you a constant readout of the METAR at your departure airport, for example. Post-flight, it logs the flight. It keeps track of the time that you were aloft and exactly the mileage. So that's really useful for your record keeping. In my mind, the problem with this watch is sort of just information overload. It kind of gives this kitchen sink approach, and it piggybacks off of some of Garmin's other wearable products. But for pilots, it doesn't seem like that's the most useful information. The Garmin D2 X10 is really light. It looks good. And frankly, I sort of missed wearing a watch. I mean, I used to wear a pilot watch When mine died several years ago, I stopped using it and relied completely on my smartphone. But I've been really surprised during this test period of how much I really enjoy having the watch in the cockpit and how useful it is.
Thanks for the call, Dave. Always good to hear from you. Wow, that is an amazing amount of technology stuffed into a wristwatch of a, looks like reasonable size. The D2 Air X10 is on sale now for $550.
Well, now if you're looking for the ultimate aviation memento, you can buy Amelia Earhart's flight cap. The cap dates back to Earhart's Atlantic crossing, and there are photos that appear to show her wearing it. And it also has her name on the inside. A family in Minnesota has owned the cap since 1929, but now it's on the auction block. The auction house says it's worth $80,000 or more. Now, as we record this, the bid is up to $47,000. You can find it on the Heritage Auctions website. Well, here is another high honor for Wally Funk. She's been named recipient of the 2021 NAA Catherine and Marjorie Stinson Trophy. The award is given by the National Aeronautic Association. Now, you may remember Funk was a longtime flight instructor and was part of the Mercury 13. That's the first group of women astronaut candidates. And she just became the oldest woman to travel to space last year above Blue Origin. Funk will receive the trophy at the 33rd Annual Women in Aviation Conference in Nashville next month, and she'll also be presented the R.A. Bob Hoover Trophy by AOPA on March 23rd in Washington, D.C. Check out our website for how you can attend. Now, if your dream is to fly to space like Wally's it was, Virgin Galactic can make it a reality. The company is now selling tickets to space open to the public. Passengers will accelerate to Mach 3 on the way to space. Then they'll take in the views of Earth and enjoy out-of-seat weightlessness before descending. The whole flight takes about 90 minutes. The cost? Well, $450,000. Now that'll also include having access to exclusive experiences, events, trips, space readiness activities, all while waiting for their flight. So, Tom, any high-flying vacations in your future?
Well, not at that price point, I don't think. Now, I am open to donations, however. If y'all want to chip in, I'd be happy to go. But
we just need to start your GoFundMe account.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you very much. Let me know when you get that done. Well, meanwhile, a little closer to the surface, the AOPA Sweepstakes Grumman Tiger is in the interior shop, but once it comes out, it's going to be a great airplane for the lucky winner. AOPA Live's Paul Harrop is a bit of a new pilot at 250 hours, but he got a checkout in the Tiger and shows us it's a good step up for a newbie and a great flyer for anyone.
Pretty excited this morning. I'm going to get a checkout and an introduction to the AOPA Sweepstakes Grumman Tiger. Colin's here with me. Colin.
Hello.
You are in charge of this beautiful project. It's coming along nicely. I'm so excited to get to learn it and to meet this airplane. Tell me about it.
Well, I'm super excited for you to check out in it, and what a beautiful blue sky day we have today. But today you are the PIC, and you are going to have to do the walk around pre-flight.
Right.
And I'm really here just to talk about what's different about the Tiger than, well, our Tiger in particular from other Tigers.
This has got a lot of things on it that didn't roll out of the factory.
Yeah.
And I am a 172 and RV12 guy, so it seems like this isn't too big of a step up for me.
No.
But I certainly need to pay attention today and learn the differences between this airplane.
Yeah, and really the biggest differences that we'll see in the pre-flight and when we're flying is we have an electrically controlled constant speed propeller from MT Propeller, and we have an electronic ignition. And those two things, you'll see a difference from normal aircraft.
A thorough pre-flight, and we were ready to taxi. That electrically adjustable pitch prop is the only really new thing to me, but it makes it easy for you.
The green light comes back on, and that should go back to where you started, which was about 1220.
Taxiing to runway 5 via Echo, hold short of 5.
Green light's on. Bingo. That means that we're able to manually control the pitch of the prop.
The next thing to pay attention to is cylinder head temps on takeoff. Not a consideration I've had on a 172 or a RV12, but not a lot to manage. This Tiger gets fast quickly.
All right, tracking that center line, engines in the green. Airspeed's coming alive. There's 50. 55. Whoop.
Traffic.
Oh, that is nose heavy. You weren't kidding. All right, so looking for 90. Well, that's getting real fast. At what point do we look for 100?
You can do 100 now. We're already at 417 cylinder head temperature,
right,
so let's trim down and go to 100.
The Tiger likes to climb. Level flight attitude feels almost nose down, so the sight picture was the next thing to get used to.
No, I am still climbing, aren't I?
Yep. It's a surprisingly nose down
Yes,
pitch.
it is. That's what I was looking for. That's about my level sight picture right about there. That feels like a descent just visually, but
That's not. No, you're pretty much level right here.
all right.
So whatever it takes to trim up level.
Turns are crisp and effortless, and the airplane is rigged and balanced perfectly.
It's very, very simple.
Yeah. I mean, this is truly a two-finger airplane.
Absolutely.
After getting a basic feel for turns and slow flight, Colin had me explore the electronic envelope protection system. It nudges you back to what it thinks is safe if you're above 200 AGL and gets slow. But time to put it all to work and make a few landings over at Carroll County Airport. I think half the fun of this airplane is getting to make radio calls that start in Grumman.
All right, Carroll County traffic, Grumman 860, turning right base, runway 34, full stop, Carroll County. All right, so we're at 78. We're about where we want to be on speed.
Yep. A little fast, but as soon as after we turn base, we'll go full flaps, and you'll see the speed come right down to 70.
All right, and so I'm good at 15 inches here?
Yep.
All right, so we're kind of squared off on base here.
County 7331 November Golf.
Full flaps.
Turn out to the west.
And let's do RPM up to full RPM.
RPM full, and we're green there.
Yep.
All right. So we got carb heat coming on.
So we're a little fast. We probably need a little bit of trim.
Carroll County traffic, Grumman 860, turning final runway 34, Carroll County. All right, so there's 76. I am fast.
Yeah, but you're good here. So I'd do a little more power just to keep this stabilized approach.
All right.
Because it will sink now in this configuration. Full flaps, it will definitely sink.
All right, gas.
Probably already feel it.
It's on full. Yeah, gas, undercarriage mixture, prop and seat belts. Let's stabilize out. 76, looking for 72. We got 3 whites. We're being blown from the right.
That's probably the stability control thing, so don't worry about it.
All right, we're back on center line. There's 72. A little bit of power to avoid sink that I can feel. We're still 4 white.
Carroll traffic number 3054 Tango base 34 Carroll.
Still high.
Yeah, we're good.
Right on speed. There's 1 red.
Carroll County traffic
72.
9185 Mike.
Where do I need to bleed down to 65?
I think you're still, well, probably right about here. Yeah.
All right.
Carroll traffic
yep, right about here in short final.
All right, so there's 65.
Pull back. On power. Yeah, there you go.
Power's coming off. And
nose down a bit, pitch down a bit. There you go. And alignment. There you go. There you go.
That wasn't the best landing I've ever done.
No, I mean, the actual landing was awesome. And most of the approach was great. This is the fine tuning, so don't worry about it at all. This is exactly why we're doing this.
All right. This is a nice flying airplane.
It is. I mean, the truth is it's not very difficult to fly, right?
No, it has a lot more systems than I'm used to managing, but it's a logical step up for me.
Oh, absolutely. This is a perfect next airplane from a 172. Absolutely ideal.
I think whoever wins this is going to have a challenge and enjoy it.
Paul Harrop, AOPA Live.
Love a Tiger. It's a great airplane. Next time you see the Sweepstakes Tiger, it'll look a lot different though. Tiger is just got a beautiful new paint job at Lancaster Aero in Pennsylvania. And we're not revealing the whole thing yet, but here's a peek at one of the colors going on the airplane. Keep an eye out for the big reveal coming up. Find out how you can win the Tiger on our website and look for it at the Sun and Fun Fly-In in April. So, Alyssa, it is going to be a terrific airplane. Love that Garmin panel. And that new interior and paint job, I think, is going to really set it apart. And somebody's going to win a very nice airplane.
That's right. That is going to be one of the main draws at our tent at Sun and Fun is everybody looking to see the new paint, new interior, panel, everything. You know, have that traditional, airplane outline where everybody wears the path out.
Right. Yeah, the grass is all dead around it by the end of the week.
That's right, yep. Well, that's all for the show this week. Thank you for watching.
And if you're not an AOPA member, we'd love to have you. It's how you can help us to protect the freedom to fly. Find out how to join at the link on your screen. See you here next week.
Purchasing your own aircraft is an exciting experience. AOPA Finance simplifies the process, saving you money with lower interest rates and hassle-free loans, so you get into your new aircraft sooner. AOPA Finance, the right approach to buying an aircraft.